On this episode of Vital Impact, the boys travel west to the Sooner State of Oklahoma in search of an elusive prairie buck. Vital Impact TV is brought to you by Gorilla, the Gorilla Safety Harness. Get it on. Carbon Express. Shoot better with Carbon Express. Madison Deer Calls. Let's make some noise. Keys Hunting Gear. Cutting Edge Hunting Packs. Strut and Rut Energy Shot. It's ammo for your body.
Well, it's the third week of November for the 2010 deer season, and Jason and I are headed out west for the first time. I acquired some property this year in northeast Oklahoma, Osage County, and we're going to try our luck at some plains deer. He and I have honed our skills over the years on the ridges and hardwood bottoms of the Midwest and here in North Carolina. This land is totally different. There's thousands and thousands of acres and very few trees. So this will be some spot and stalk action that we're not used to, but we feel good that we're going to get it done.
And luckily I draw the longer straw in this hunt. I'm up first trying to get it done. Scott just knocked down a 150-inch bruiser over in Illinois a couple weeks back, and now it's my turn to try to make it happen. He's given me his lucky knife, so most times that means it's going to happen. We arrive one day before the season starts just to kind of get there a little early one evening and try to scout some of it and scope some of it out with our binoculars and see kind of what's going on. But Scott actually came back to this property back in the summer just to kind of get an idea of the size of it. But this is my first time looking at it, and just the sheer size of this property will just blow you away. I'm a North Carolina boy and big timber hunting, but this is just miles and miles and miles of prairie, and you wouldn't think a deer would even be on this property, but we're going to see if we can make it happen. Well, it's the first morning, we're back out on this property, and we go to a spot where yesterday evening we actually see some does and see a nice buck come out that evening. So we go back there, and a lot of walking to do on this property. You can't drive too much, and got to lay down the boot leather and try to make something happen because it's just prairie, 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 and more prairie. And we get out to this spot and we walk a long ways, and it's not too long before we figure out we're in the wrong spot. So we decide to make the trek back to the truck and drive to the other side of the ranch, and got a tip from the local farmer there that he's been seeing a nice deer on this side of the ranch. So we head that way in anticipation of something good happening, and sure enough, we're driving back down through there, and I see a doe bedded out to the right, maybe 150, 200 yards from the truck. I tell Scott to stop the truck. We get out, and sure enough, as soon as we get out, a buck stands up, and I'm looking at him through the binoculars, and he's an absolute monster. Probably one of the biggest deer I've ever seen on foot. Definitely in the 170s, maybe a true booner. Definitely huge deer, but we make a mistake. And as you can see, the mistake was us stopping the truck in sight of that deer. After this happened, we firmly believed that if we would have just kept on driving and hid the truck and then snuck back up over the hill, because we had the wind in our favor, that this buck would be dead right now, and we'd be showing off some horns. But as my luck would have it, we stopped the truck. He can still see the truck. We try to make a sneak on him, and he blows up and down through the bottom he goes. And but we decide that, you know, this buck is out. He's with does. He's chasing does. He may come back out. So this is the buck we're going to hunt the rest of the week. Well, after making that mistake and blowing those deer out of there, we decided to go to another spot on the farm. It's kind of a vantage point overlooking a huge bottom. It's actually a little finger of timber that comes off a large lake on the property, and we kind of overlooked that area that afternoon and see a few does, and not really nothing to be extremely excited about, but those does we did see were coming out of a bedding area and going to a spot where those deer were earlier that morning, thinking that's where the big buck was. So our plan was to slip in there the next morning and get there well before daylight so we can get up on that little hill, overlook that little timber bottom, in extreme excitement that that buck's going to still be there with those does and we're going to get a chance at him. Well, day one ends with Scott and I doing a little long-range scouting with the binoculars, and just an effort to try to see where deer are coming and going, and kind of getting our arms wrapped around this piece of property and getting a game plan together for day two. Well, after bumping those deer a second time, we try to scale back and regroup on to plan B. And plan B is going to be getting near a water hole because it's extremely warm this week. It's probably around 80 degrees, and this is mid-November in Oklahoma. Definitely abnormal weather for that time of year. So our plan B is to get up on a high vantage point overlooking a water hole and just see what can happen. Well, we get set up on this fence line, got a couple cedar trees to our back to give us some cover, and Scott has not even got the camera fully set up yet, and I spot a deer on the next ridge over coming our way. So I get my binoculars up and look, and it's actually a good buck. But this buck is about 400 yards away, but lucky for me, he's angling towards me down to the corner of this pond. So I feel good that we're gonna get a shot here. So we get set up, I get my gun ready, we're waiting for this buck to make his way down, but I range the corner of the pond that he's eventually gonna make it to, and it's 274 yards. So I gotta get my mind right to make a shot of this distance, because us North Carolina boys don't typically get shots that far.
You dropped him. You just smoked him. Now, hold still. Yes! He's still, just watch him. Just watch him. Yes! He's 160. Nah, he's real tall. He's not. He's definitely not zero. We caught yesterday. He's not very wide. There's up there. So yesterday he's tall. Get right there. Get right there. In front of the camera.
Well, I'm going to recover my buck. We're walking down the hill to recover him, and we get close to him, and this sucker jumps up and runs off. I look at Scott. Scott looks at me. What do we do next? So we get our minds straight, we back out of there, go back to the truck, and formulate a plan to recover this deer, because I think I've made a great shot on him. Well, Scott and I back out. We get in the truck, go back and grab some lunch, and as we get there, we review the footage on the camera several times, and we notice that the shot's actually a little high. It's above the shoulder, in the neck, in the muscle area, right at the top of the deer's neck. And if you watch the footage closely, you'll see where the deer is on its back and it's licking his lips, which gives us an idea that we think it's equivalent to a boxer getting knocked out, like a concussion. And the deer is trying to get consciousness back so he can jump up and run off, which is exactly what he did. Well, long story short, we never do find this deer. We make every effort to find him, but we just can't find him. Turn over leaves, crawl on our hands and knees to try to track him by his tracks, but we just can't find him. But now it's time for cameraman Scott to get in front of the camera and try to make it happen. So I'm getting behind the camera.
Wow, what a heartbreaking series of events. I really felt bad for Jason. He had put a lot of effort into this buck. It was a very unique deer, and I just really hated for it not to come together for him. But folks, and this is one of those stories that has a but in it, 2010 was that special year for me. It seemed like every move that I made, every stand set that I hung turned out to be just right. And as you're about to see, Oklahoma was no exception. From looking at the topographical map, I had located a fence row that had some brush on it that I had marked that I thought could potentially be a big buck spot. And I decided that that's where we were going to head. We make our way over a ridge down this old fence line. And sure enough, when we get ready to get set up, Jason spots a deer. So we get set up quickly, and as you'll see, the deer start filtering out. As he told you earlier, we're in the rut. There's a hot doe amongst this group, and when you've got a hot doe, you got the potential for a big buck. We quickly realize that there is a shooter in the bunch, and the rest, well, let the video show the story. Welcome back. We found my deer hunting here in Oklahoma during the rifle season. Had an extremely exciting morning. It is actually crazy the way events went down today. Cameraman Jason shot a deer first thing this morning and dropped it in its tracks, 250 yards away. We saw the deer coming down a hillside. He made a perfect shot on it. And when we went to retrieve his deer, after it had been laying there for 15 minutes, it actually was able to get up and run away. So we backed out to give it some time, went back to town, got some stuff, got a tarp and some supplies ready to get his deer out. Came back approximately 3 or 4 hours later and walked down the dam of this pond, which is in the background. Got across the edge of this pond, and cameraman Jason said, "Look, Scott, here comes some more deer down the hill." So we crept down. Sure enough, there were 4 deer. This buck was chasing
a big mature doe. They were both panting really hard. He had obviously been chasing her in the middle of the day today. I was able to make a good shot on him. Got the great shot on film, and he ran 40, 50 yards and crumpled up, made a great shot on him. So we've been very, very good so far this year. This is my second deer out of state this year. I killed a nice 150 class 10-pointer last week with my bow in Pike County, Illinois. And here we are in Osage County, Oklahoma. First time we've ever been here, wide open country. We laid a smack down on another nice deer. It's a 9-pointer, guessing 140, 145 inches. We'll put the tape on him after a while. Right now we got to get this thing field dressed into the check station.
Well, our Oklahoma trip turned out to be a very emotional trip. We experienced the lowest of lows and the highest of highs. But I am a true believer that it is a sportsman's paradise. We saw thousands and thousands of ducks, hundreds of coyotes, lots of deer, shooter bucks, and we will definitely be back.
This episode of Vital Impact TV was brought to you by Gorilla, the Gorilla Safety Harness. Get it on. Carbon Express. Shoot better with Carbon Express. Madison Deer Calls. Let's make some noise. Keys Hunting Gear. Cutting Edge Hunting Packs. Strut and Rut Energy Shot. It's ammo for your body.